Investigators will be surveying the crash site, and that's something that my next guest has good insight into. Deborah Hirschman was the chair of the NTSB for 5 years and used to oversee investigations into accidents like this one. She's now the president and CEO of the National Safety Council and joins us from their offices in Itasca, Illinois. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Hirschman. Let's talk about the investigator dispatched to the area, the team, in fact. What will they be looking for?
So one of the first things they want to do in this busy rail and highway corridor is make sure they secure all the perishable evidence. Your reporter on scene was talking about the crane. They're trying to remove those cars and the engines, get that track back in shape, and make sure that the highway is fully operational. But before they do that, they want to make sure that they've documented everything and it doesn't get damaged as it's moved.
Yesterday, as we were reporting on this, we noted the curve over as the track moves to go over the I-5. It's a substantial and steep curve, and now we understand that the train was going as much as 2 times over the speed limit at the time of derailment. What does that tell you?
So this is very concerning because certainly the speed of the train at the time of the derailment is going to determine the severity of the outcomes and the survivability. And so in this situation, what we are hearing is if they were in that 30-mile-per-hour zone and were actually operating at what the highest level of the track speed, about 80 miles per hour on this route is, that would show that they were going too fast for conditions. Now, understanding why that happened is what the NTSB will be looking at. They'll be looking at the human, the machine, and the environment to determine if there were any equipment or mechanical failures or any human factors issues that need to be explored.
Could that speed, that excessive speed alone, be enough to precipitate the derailment such as we saw?
Absolutely. It's just like when we're driving our car, we're coming off of a high-speed interstate and we get on an exit ramp and it's a speed-limited environment. The curvature of that track is going to determine the operating speed for the train as it traverses that area of the trip. And so they've got to bring their speed down to come around that corner safely. And unfortunately, in the U.S. here, we've seen a number of events, Metro North, Amtrak in Philadelphia in the last 5 years, where we had overspeed events going too fast for conditions that resulted in fatal derailments.
We know that this car was a Siemens, the locomotive itself was a Siemens Charger. It's meant for high-speed rail travel. Siemens, of course, has been building locomotives for 150 years, but still, are U.S. rail lines built to accommodate high-speed locomotives like we do see in Europe?
The controlling factor really for the speed is going to be the equipment and the track. And so you've got to have track that's brought up to higher speeds. Obviously, you don't want to be running something 150, 200 miles an hour and have to slow down to a 30-mile-per-hour curve. So you really want to design those high-speed tracks so that you're protecting grade crossings and intersections with vehicle traffic. And you have lots of straightaway in order for them to gain that speed. This, even though it's called high speed, was only 79 miles per hour at its maximum. And so in many cases and many other places, this wouldn't be considered high speed rail.
We've been hearing a lot about positive train control. We've heard about it in previous crashes as well. Not in place, we understand, on this track. Could that have prevented what we're seeing?
If this was simply a human factors issue where the operator was inattentive or incapacitated, not paying attention, fatigued, distracted, then yes, positive train control is something that protects against that human failure. It's a backup or a redundant system to the human being. It can slow or even stop a train prior to a collision with another train, or if it's going too fast for conditions. It uses GPS technology, like when we're driving in our car and using a mapping system. This technology has been around for decades, and it has been recommended for decades by the NTSB.
And yet, it is not in place in a lot of major train lines, including, of course, this one. Why?
Yeah, so this is a very frustrating situation from an investigative and safety perspective, because in investigation after investigation, NTSB has determined that whether human beings are distracted, like in the Metrolink crash in Southern California in 2008, where 25 were killed, or in the Philadelphia Amtrak crash in 2015, where we had fatalities, or in Spuyten and Duyvil, where there was a fatigued Metro North engineer who suffered from sleep apnea. All of these things could be addressed with positive train control. In 2008, Congress required that the railroads put positive train control on lines for passenger rail and for high hazardous materials routes by 2015. They gave the railroads 7 years. When they got close to that deadline, Congress actually extended it and pushed it back. So now we're in that delay period. They're supposed to get some of this done by 2018 now. Unfortunately, we keep seeing events like this where PTC, if it could have prevented this crash but wasn't in place, that's another nail in this coffin of why aren't we putting this old technology on our lines in the U.S.? We need to be doing it.
Deborah, I want to thank you for your time and your insight on this. It's been invaluable. Deborah Hirschman
Thank you.
Is the former chair of the NTSB. She's now the president and CEO of the National Safety Council, and she joined us from Itasca, Illinois.